Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, and I got a great guest today. His name is Mr. Bryan Clayton. He owns a company called Greenpal. He's at yourgreenpal.com. Super smart guy. He's built a couple of companies in his lifetime. He was kind of thrust into entrepreneurialism, by his father. And the bottom line is he's done quite well. He built his first company up and sold it off. He built it up to about 10 million or above and sold the company off at that time. So the interesting thing about Bryan is Bryan's a no frills, no hold back type of guy. He just like lays it out there and says, hey, here's how it is. We talk a lot about in this episode what actually prevents somebody from growing, and we both agree that a lot of times it's in the mind of the leader of the company. So we go in depth on a bunch of this today on the call. So enjoy the call and let's go to the interview. Hey everyone, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I have a really great guy. His name is Bryan Clayton. He owns a company called yourgreenpal.com. And Bryan is gracious enough because we did an interview before, and I was dumb enough not to record it. So he was gracious enough to overlook that. And unfortunately, it was one of the best interviews ever. So hopefully we can exceed this one today. So Bryan, welcome to the call, sir.
Doug, thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
I really appreciate you being here. You're in Tennessee, correct?
That's right.
In the United States, for those of you listening internationally, kind of in the middle of the country. And Bryan, you have an interesting story, and I love it because, I had a landscaping company early in my life, but, your dad seemed to kind of push you out one day and say, hey, son, go make some money, mow a lawn. Is that how it happened?
Luckily, I was dragged into entrepreneurship and business ownership, kicking and screaming by my father. He interrupted me playing Nintendo on a hot summer day and said, get off your butt. I lined up a gig for you. You're going to go mow the neighbor's yard. Luckily, he did that because after I worked my butt off for an hour and figured out how to cut a lawn, I made $20 and I was just hooked. I was hooked on entrepreneurship from that moment forward. And the first thing I did after I got done and got paid was I went back to my little desktop computer back in the 90s. That's all we had, and made up some flyers and passed them out. And by the end of that first summer, I had like 10 or 15 customers. And I was just bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I stuck with that lawn mowing business for 15 years and built it into one of the largest landscaping companies in the state of Tennessee where I live.
Well, I think you're being a little modest. You got it over $10 million a year, right?
That's right. Yeah. Ultimately, we, little by little, it wasn't like overnight, but little by little got it over 10 million a year in revenue, over 150 employees. And in 2013, the business was acquired by one of the largest landscaping groups in the United States. And so going from just me and a push mower to me and 80 or 90 trucks going out every day, I learned a lot the hard way on how to get a business going. And after I sold that company, I plowed all that into my second company, Greenpal, which is kind of like the Uber for lawn mowing. So it's a technology-based company, completely different world, and kind of had to start all over again and reinvent myself. But I love business, and I've 22 years in one industry and seen it from every angle you can see it from. And every 3 or 4 years, I've become a completely new person. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you're doing it repetitively, successfully, I should say. Doing it, it's not a fluke. You did it once. Now you did it with Greenpal. You're up to, last time we talked, 20 million plus?
Yeah, doing over $20 million a year in revenue through our platform. And, luckily I didn't know what I didn't know when I started the second company, because if I had known how hard it was going to be to get a software business going, I'd have never done it. And so I think like naivete as an asset is a real thing. I think when you're first getting started, like not knowing the complexities and not knowing how hard it's going to be and how challenging it's going to be is actually a benefit, because that just gets you in the game. Get in the game and keep moving forward. Don't give up is how you get something going.
And Bryan, do you find that most entrepreneurs, they get into the game and they find this, right? No matter what industry they get into, they're going to get some kind of pushback. I love the quote, "Struggle is guaranteed, suffering is optional."
That's right.
And no matter what business, I've been in 35 of them in my life, and they've all had some struggles in one capacity. But one of my mentors early on in my life, when I was a young guy, he told me, one of the biggest reasons that people don't make it is they quit. They get to a place and then they quit, and it becomes mediocrity, or, hey, I'll settle here or whatever. But what I'm hearing you say is, to grow to, 8+ figures or more, you can't quit. You can't settle for mediocrity. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think a lot of it, the slog, the grind, the first 2 or 3 years is going to be a slog. And I think a lot of what the slog is expectations. We expect it to go faster, therefore it feels like a slog. We expect it to be easier, therefore it feels like a grind, and it feels like it's not fun. Whereas if we can manage our psychology and manage our expectations and understand that the first year of any business is going to be hard. It's going to be a year just figuring out where the hell you're going. Year 2 is going to be a little better, but not much. Year 3, 4, maybe you get something going. It's not till year 5, 6, 7 when you start to really get some compound interest rolling, does it start to get interesting and fun. So it's a combination of being patient and like trusting the process, but then also on the other hand, like literally getting stuff done and executing, setting goals, small attainable goals, celebrating those wins, rinse and repeat, keep the progress and momentum going. Because a lot of times you'll see folks that waste 5 years and don't go anywhere. And I thought it was just going to take 5 years. Well, it doesn't. It's that, and you've got to be hitting some numbers that are doable over a long period of time, and those begin to compound like a snowball.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And it's interesting to me what you're saying, because a lot of people don't think long term with the business. They think, I'm getting in it, I'm going to replace my income, or, hey, I'm borrowing a bunch of money, I can take the investor's money and I can make an income. And it's not, if it goes where it goes, great. If it doesn't, great. But the bottom line is, it is a long-term play. And in fact, an attorney said this to me once, Bryan. He said, look, if you're going to get into business, you better plan on marrying that, because you never know if you're going to be able to get out or sell it.
That's right. That's right. My co-founder and I, my first business, used to say we were married to the front door of the shop. And it is very true. It's going to be very much the business is you. It's scaffolding around you. And that's the way like 20 years business has been for me. Like it is an extension of myself. It is part of my soul, part of my DNA. I'm pouring my soul into it. And I think that's what it takes to get started. Well, I heard a quote the other day by Sean Parker, who, like in the movie The Social Network, he was played by Justin Timberlake, was the first CEO of Facebook. And he says starting a business is like eating glass, and eventually you get to like the taste of your own blood. And so we're throwing out all these scary like analogies, and anybody listening to this is like, why the hell would I do that? Or why would the hell would I subject myself to that? Well, but on the other hand, I think it can be like one of the best things you can do with your life, because wow, what an amazing thing we all have access to make something of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's like we all have access to YouTube University, and we can learn how to do this stuff. We can all listen to podcasts like this one and learn from other people who have kind of been down the path to do it for ourselves and literally make something interesting of our life. Business is the thing to do that. One of my favorite books by a guy named Donald Miller is called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. And the point of this book is that to live an interesting story, or to live an interesting life, you have to live an interesting story. So there has to be an interesting story to your life, or else it's going to be a pretty dull life. So you got to do interesting stuff. Well, I read the book and I'm like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. My business is the storyline to my life. It is the thing causing me to do interesting things. It is the thing causing me to overcome these obstacles and challenges. Without the business, my life would probably be pretty dull. So that's the way I look at it. And that kind of reframing takes care of a lot of like the low parts that we all go through.
We're speaking with Mr. Bryan Clayton from Greenpal. It's at yourgreenpal.com. If you want a lawn person to come by and mow your lawn, go to his site. If you're somebody who has a lawn mowing business and you want to pick up additional business for yourself, go there. I can tell you from owning a landscaping business in the past, folks, and right now I live in Florida, you don't want to mow your lawn at 94 degrees outside by yourself.
Nope.
and keep gasoline stored in your location. So Bryan, what I really love about this conversation is I think it gets down to the crux of what really makes or breaks a business from growing, which is the mind or the mindset of the leadership that's actually driving the business. And I think it's so important. I mean, I remember, when we were talking before, I think your first year, because you went from one industry to another, thought, hey, I was successful in this other one. I'll be so successful, I'll give it time. But I think you made something like the company made like $10,000 or something. Right?
You're bringing up flashbacks.
Well, I know I've had that as well. I've transitioned from even one industry that I had experience in into the same industry, but I went into a different facet of the business and, was expecting to do, gangbusters year one, year two, just like you were talking about. But then all of a sudden, it's like, oops, just lost 60 grand the first 4 months.
Right.
Right. And so, how do you recover from that? Right. How do you keep yourself going? Can you expand upon that for us?
Yeah, I've definitely been there, building my first company, getting it, over 10 mil and 100 some odd people, selling it. That doesn't happen a lot in the landscaping business and all of that. And I'm riding high. I feel like I know everything there is to know about business, small business, and start the second business is like a big punch in the gut. And so that's one of the cool things about entrepreneurship is like, it's a feedback machine. Boy, you want something humble to do with your life, start a business. It will keep you humble because the marketplace does not care who you are, doesn't care what your connections are. The marketplace doesn't care where you came from, where you went to school, what your skin color is, what your ethnicity is, what your gender is. Marketplace doesn't care. Marketplace is going to give you unvarnished feedback as to how good your product or service is relentlessly. One of my favorite quotes is Jeff Bezos, and he says, what I love about the customer is that the customer is relentlessly discontent, meaning like there's always wanting something better, faster, cheaper, more convenient, more seamless. And so for you to succeed in getting your business, your product or service off the ground, it's going to be hard. It's going to be humbling. And so how do you get through that? Here I am, I had a business doing multi-millions of dollars. And then I started this little app that really was clunky and was hard to use. And I was just begging people to use it for a $27 lawn mowing. That was humble, but I mean, it was humiliating. But what I did was I set little goals. Like business is full of these dichotomies. And one is you have to have this huge, audacious goal, vision of the future that doesn't yet exist. And you're going to bring it to life. Huge. But then you also have to think and act very, very small. And so the first 4 or 5 years of Greenpal was very much that. We knew that if we could just get 100 people to use it in 1 week, that we could make it work nationwide. And so that's all we focused on. We needed 100 people in 1 week to use it in one neighborhood in Nashville. And then we knew we could expand from there. And we worked our butts off for a year, and we ended the first year with 57 people. And I think 20 of them were my friends and family. And so it's so that sucked, but we saw enough validation to keep going. And where we got the validation was from our users, from our customers. We would meet with them and they would always tell us where we sucked. The contractor didn't show up. Prices were too high. They showed up, but did a crappy job. I signed up, but didn't get any quotes, million problems. Right. But what we never heard was, I don't need this. We never heard, we never saw apathy. We never saw meh. They wanted it to work. They wanted it to solve the problem that they had. And so we used that as validation to keep going. And so to get through those early years, the early tough parts of the journey, look for those little points of validation, set little small goals to where, if you can get 100, you can get 1,000, you can get 1,000, you can get 10, you get 10, you can get 100,000. That's how we looked at it. And we just kept sticking it out and treating it as like a 20-mile march, as a marathon. And that's why we're here today. We're an 8-year overnight success.
as most successful business owners are, right? 8 years in the making or more. There's a couple things that I wanted to go back on that you brought up, which is unvarnished feedback is humbling, right? And too many, I find anyways, too many of my clients or too many of people in business in general, that unvarnished varnished feedback that you were talking about is the gold to be able to adjust, but people get their ego in the way and they go, oh, well, that hurt. So they don't actually take a look at that as something positive versus something that's more of an attack really against their own, side. Have you run into this with entrepreneurs as well? I know you.
Yeah. And I get it. Because here's why. You spend 3 months, 6 months, a year pouring your soul into something. It becomes a part of you. It's almost like an artist with a painting or a musician with their album or whatever, like an entrepreneur with their product or their business. It's very much the same thing. And so when somebody attacks your baby, you're naturally defensive. And so that's happened to me. And it took a while for me to reframe it. It's like, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And that feedback is the only like roadmap you have to figure out if you're going the right direction or not. If you don't have that feedback, then you don't really know if you're on track to build something that people want to use or not. And so I think a strategy in the early days, particularly if you only have 100 or 200 or a handful of users, you want to make it dead easy for them to contact you, for them to speak with you. Remove all the friction for them to tell you where you stink, because that is what you need. Like, you need that feedback. And once you can reframe it and understand, like, this is something I need, I don't know it all. Well, then you can leverage it and use it. And then you can build something that is making more people happy and not getting all the negative feedback all the time. So it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. That's helped me reframe it.
I firmly agree. And, time changes things. Sometimes technology changes things and people have different wants, needs, fears, desires over time. And one of the mistakes I see a lot of companies make, and I'm going to signal out Geico right now for this. I've been with Geico for 19 years. Which is kind of unheard of in the insurance business, right? To hold a client
Crazy.
For 19 years. And in 1 week, both my windshields on my 2 company cars, bang, rocks through the windshields, right? So I call up and I'm like trying to get through the glass department, and it's taking me a flipping hour to actually get somebody on the line, right? So I'm questioning in my head, man, should I be here? Because it used to be such a great communication mechanism. And that's part of the reason I stayed there, because I don't care about, 10% here and there, and insurance is not going to throw me off.
Right. Exactly.
So when I got the person on the phone, I'm like, man, you guys open to some feedback? She goes, sure. And I tell her, and then I told the second person, and quite frankly, I still don't feel heard. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so I'm thinking, oh, okay, Liberty Mutual, maybe, go out to see some other insurance company. But the fact that you allow people to get to you and give you that active feedback, which is going to allow them to adjust, because I'm sure, like with Geico's case, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's not wanting to sit on a phone for an hour to get their glass repaired. I think it's so invaluable to get that feedback and have easy access. And I see a mistake companies make all the time. They don't have enough people in place, either, in-house or outsourced, to collect that information so they can make adjustments along the way.
Exactly. And here's the problem. Like, big company like Geico, there's so many layers between that feedback getting to somebody who has the ability to implement change in the business, that there's this huge gap that exists between company logic and customer logic. And so every business deals with this gap. And you, as a startup, as a smaller business, can run circles around the bigger businesses because you can close that gap. And you can almost have it to where there's no space between customer logic and company logic. And that's how you can create disruption. That's how you can run circles around the big incumbents, because you can close that gap. But it doesn't happen automatically. The way you close the gap is removing all the friction between that feedback, that person who's pissed off because they just have a simple claim, and why does it take an hour? Like, that's not the brand Geico. Like, that's not what I know. But the person at the top, that, a person in the position to make change around that, doesn't know that either. There's a gap. And so the way you kind of close that gap is making it easy for customers to talk to you. That's one. But two, use your product. Like what they call it, dog fooding your own product. Like, use it. Like for us at Greenpal in the early days, it was mandatory that the 3 co-founders and every family member use the product. Mandatory. Everybody, mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, aunt, everybody had to use it. If not, we're not going to do this. Because only when you are your own customer, especially in the early days, can you then kind of see those opportunities to close the gap between customer logic and company logic.
And I think that's important, if somebody's out selling, to do the same exact thing, right? So even people out in the sales arena or sales field, when they want to grow their revenue, having that active feedback mechanism from the field and adjusting their sales and their marketing and their messaging is so critical. And
exactly.
And I'm not here to signal out, my insurance company. I'm still with them and all, but the bottom line is that you are absolutely right from my perspective that when we're smaller, we are nimble and we can do these things. That when we get to a certain place like Geico or whatever, yeah, some of the stuff's the feedback mechanism is not going to be as easy to do. Why do you think people don't adjust, Brian? Like, they get the feedback, they just don't adjust, right?
It's not natural. It's not easy. And it's hard. It's easier to just keep your head in the laptop and just work on what you think you should be working on and hope that it works out than to listen to that feedback and take action. And so it's like in business, you're either going to be, you're going to, if you do things that are hard, business will be easy. If you do things that are easy, business will be hard. And a high leverage, hard thing to do is to collect that feedback, do the customer support. No matter how big you get, even today, Greenpal, as we speak, has tens of thousands of people on the app. I still do an hour or two of customer support every day because I don't want to lose. I want to close that gap. So doing those things, and do what one of my favorite books is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And one thing he talks about in that book is doing things that are important, but not urgent. And so in business, we're dominated by the urgent and unimportant, and we stay there. And so it's just constant chaos, because we're always doing things that are urgent and unimportant. Where you need to focus is things that are important but not urgent. And so these are things like running customer surveys, doing customer support, soliciting customer feedback, signing up for your own product. You don't have to do that on Monday morning to keep the business open, and so you never do it. But if you can spend time in that high leverage quadrant, over time it begins to build, and the compound interest around that begins to build. And then you, over a 5-year time, you can build a completely different business. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I thought working hard was just coming in and just doing the same stuff day in, day out, and answering the same 100 emails and dealing with the same customer complaints and not getting to the root cause of these things. And you got to break out of that. You got to make time for the things that are important, but aren't necessarily urgent this moment.
I love that. It's there's a show out there. I can't remember what the heck it's called right now, but it's like CEO Undercover, right? The CEO, they put the
and they're always surprised.
Right.
They're always just blown away as to, really, is this how it really is? I mean, that is a crystal clear manifestation of the customer logic and company logic. And that's, even your own people, your own employees are kind of your customers in a way. And so it's so funny. I love that show.
Yeah, I do too. And doing, consulting work and things, many times I come in and I tell the CEO, listen, when I interview your people, they're probably going to tell me exactly what they've been telling someone in this company for a while, right? Because you're stuck, right? And so don't be surprised if 70% of what I'm going to come back with.
Yeah.
And it's because it's so true. You know, people just, they get going day to day. They look at the top line number, they go, hey, and what they don't realize is that erosion below. Hey, I could talk with you all day, but I also know you're a busy guy too. I do have one final question for you, which I think is in a lot of people's mind. You know, does it get easier when you're at 20 million versus 5, or, you know, does it get easier as you grow the revenue up the process? I mean, can't you just like kind of step back a little bit and sort of like coast, you know, those type of things? Does it get easier, or is it one of those things that it's just different?
It's a really good question. I think every business is like the main choke point is the founder or the CEO's like personal uh, abilities in terms of leadership, strategy, management, all of these things. Like that's the choke point for every business. And so that's one thing that can cause it to get harder. As you, as the owner, as the founder, as the CEO, if you're not evolving, if you're not growing, if you're not getting better, then yeah, it's going to be harder and it's going to hit a wall. So that's the first thing. Like the business as it's growing is going to cause you to level up, which is great. That's an awesome thing about business. You should, if you're doing business right, every 3 to 5 years, you as the founder should evolve completely into a completely new person. So that's the first thing. The second thing is like, it's almost like a video game, like old school style Super Mario Brothers, 10 levels, or maybe there was only 12 or 8, I can't remember, but every level is different. And at the end of every level, there's a new boss and there's a new challenge that you're facing. And it always gets harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. So it's like playing Super Mario Brothers on level 1 for the same level for 10 years is probably a lot harder because it sucks and it's boring than like getting to level 10 and finally facing Bowser. But Bowser is actually harder than what you face at the end of level 1. So it's more difficult and more challenging in ways, but staying stuck at a small level also sucks in other ways. And so does it get easier? Yes, in the sense that you now have a team. You now have some momentum. You can, a lot of times as a founder, it's your job to like allocate capital. And so if you have a little bit of capital to work with, you can allocate it and make small, smart bets that are going to pay off. So that's fun. But on the other hand, it's also harder because the implications are a lot more severe, and you have to make more bets. You have to take on elements of risk that you didn't have to do in the early days. And so it is easier in a sense that you can develop a team around you, but it is harder in a sense that the stakes are higher. And if you screw things up, you not only screwed up for you and a couple people, you screwed up for maybe you and a dozen or 100 people. Yeah. So it's easier and harder, but I tell you, it's more fun. It's more fun beating Bowser than it is, I can't even remember who was at the end of the first level of Super Mario World. Like, it's a lot more fun, like beating the game, right? And so that's how I look at it. And the other thing too is like to take inventory of yourself as the founder. I'm really good at 0 to 1 million and 1 million to 10, and now I'm kind of getting from 10 to 50. But I may find out that when we get over $100 million, I may suck. And like every business goes through 3 phases: the startup, the grow up, and the scale up. And I'm proven and good on those first 2. I'm not proven on the third. So I may suck at that third phase. And if I do find that I'm not suited for it, I'll bring in somebody. So being like transparent with yourself and understanding kind of where you're topping out, I think can help you like get through or level up or understand when it's time to turn over the reins.
I think that's so intelligent. And, Google did this, right? The Sergio and Brin, they started up, I think they got it to 80 to 100 million or something. Then they brought in somebody who knew how to scale it from that.
That's right.
And so,
rarely does one guy like see it through all 3 phases. That's so rare.
It's, I've actually only known 1, 2, 3 that have actually done and exited in that capacity, and they said part of the reason that they were able to do that is because they hired better people and surrounded themselves with them. Right.
Absolutely. And it's like Mark Zuckerberg, whatever you think of him, one of my favorite quotes of his, he says, you cannot be a know-it-all. You have to be a learn-it-all. And you look at that dude, I mean, 0 to I think there's $600-700 billion, like one guy. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And it's probably revolves around that dude just really learns as much as he can about everything. And this is just insanely like tenacious about it. And I think it's possible, but you don't see it often.
Oh, and whether people like him or love him, I mean, he did change the world,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? In a lot of ways.
I love Instagram. I love Facebook. I mean, I know a lot of people don't, but in many ways, their platform is what's enabled us to do what we're doing with our platform, because they've connected the world in such a way that other networks like ours can come on top and do interesting things. So I think it's a net positive.
I agree with you. Bryan, if people want to, let's say they're either a landscaper today, they want to get more, business, or there's somebody out there going, yeah, you know what, Doug, in that 94-degree heat makes sense. I'm even in Seattle today and it's that hot, right? I don't want to mow
It's
my lawn.
life is too short to cut your own grass. If you don't want to mess with it, or if your lawn guy flaked on you, you can download Greenpal in the App Store or Play Store. You'll get hooked up with a great lawn mowing service in less than a minute. Anybody that wants to make an extra $1,000 a week can be a lawn care service on top of Greenpal, and can sign up at yourgreenpal.com.
Did I just hear you say anybody can go out and mow lawns and make a extra $1,000 a week?
It is the best side gig to put an extra grand a week in your pocket. And we have thousands of service providers that do just that. Firemen, school teachers, bartenders, you name it. Like, maybe they have irregular schedules, but they have a few free days a week.
Yeah.
They can go out and hustle it and make at least that, some much more. And yeah, it's hard work, but we enable them to get started from zero and run everything through the platform. It's our job to just get anybody who wants to work hard to that point.
Yeah, I think it's hard work for sure, because I've done it, but also being tethered to a desk, or or dealing in a retail environment with upset customers, that's also tough work too. I think if I was in that position again, I'd for $50,000 to $100,000 a year, I think I'd go get a lawnmower and get a hold of you.
Heck
Really.
yeah. And that's what we're in the business of doing. There's no easy way to make money, that's for sure. But this is a good one that for anybody that wants to try it out.
That's awesome. Bryan, really thank you for being here. Appreciate you as always. You're a gentleman, and you always bring great information to everybody. So anything that you'd like to say in parting? If not, then I'll bid you a wonderful day.
Well, Doug, thanks for having me on. I do appreciate it. Anybody listening to this that maybe they're in their first year, or they're thinking about starting, it's like, in my opinion, owning and starting a business is one of the best things you can do with your life. So, like, get in the game, be willing to stick it out for 5 or 10 years, make a plan, work the plan. And the other thing I will say is this: if you're going to start a business, your living room must become a classroom. Your car must become a mobile classroom. There are not going to be enough hours in a week for you to learn the things you're going to have to learn. And that could be anything from around leadership, management, finance, raising capital, product design, whatever. The good is, these days, with YouTube and other places, you can learn this stuff. So be willing to put in the 20, 30 hours a week of learning. And if you're willing to do that, then this could be the best thing that you do with your life.
Excellent. Bryan, thanks again, and we'll be talking with you soon. Hey, was that great or what? This is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. And, Bryan is a really smart guy. I agree with everything that we talked about on this particular episode. And one of the things he talked about was, constantly learn and grow, reinvent yourself every 3 to 5 years as a CEO. And it's not, it's mandatory really when it comes down to it, right? I've always taught something called the 10% rule, where, take your income this year and figure out how to make at least 10%. Now, a lot of people go, well, that's not that much. It's only 10%. But if you do this over the next 5 years, what'll happen is, what you will find is, if you can go 10% a year, you build new skill sets and new opportunities to actually start growing yourself and your business, and it exponentially starts to grow. And I did this, when I was a sales rep, I would be at 100,000 a year, and I'd be like, geez, how do I get 10%? Well, within 4 years, I went from 100,000 to 494,000. So, just 10% a year, but you got to get in the game, and you've got to learn and stay with the game, and understand that the game's not personal. It's just giving you, as Bryan said, unvarnished feedback. And I thought that was awesome. because if we take that feedback and we apply it, we do great things in life. All right. So till next time, again, if you like this podcast, please go up and give it a 5-star review. If you want to get my book, please go to winwinsellingbook.com. And if you have ideas for upcoming shows, just please, email in at doug@businesssuccessfactors.com, or, connect with me at LinkedIn at Doug Brown 1234 on LinkedIn, and let me know, or just send your comments in and let me know what you want to hear about next. All right. Until next time, go out, sell some good stuff, grow your company, and to your success.